A couple was Christmas shopping at the mall on Christmas Eve, and the mall was packed. As the wife walked through the mall, she was surprised to look up and see her husband was nowhere around. She was quite upset because they had a lot to do. Because she was so worried, she called him on her mobile phone to ask him where he was. In a calm voice, the husband said, "Honey, do you remember the jewelry store we went into about 5 years ago where you fell in love with that diamond necklace that we could not afford? And I told you that I would get it for you one day." The wife choked up and started to cry and said, "Yes, I remember that jewelry store." He said, "Well, I'm in the bar right next to it." A cell phone rings in a locker room. A man answers the phone. He puts it on speaker. Man: "Hello." Woman: "Hi, honey, it's me. Are you at the club?" Man: "Yes." Woman: "I'm at the mall and I just saw this beautiful leather coat and it's only $2,000. Can I have it?" Man: "Sure." Woman: "Oh, and I just stopped by at the Lexus dealership and saw a car I really liked. Can I have it?" Man: "How much is it?" Woman: $90, thousand. Man: "Well, if it's that much, I want it with all the features." Woman: "Of course I will. Oh yeah, one more thing. I just finished talking to Sarah, and the house I wanted is back on the market. They're asking $880, thousand for it." Man: "Okay, make an offer for $900, thousand. If they don't take it, offer them an extra $80K if that's what you really want." Woman: "Thank you so much, honey. Love you, bye." Man: "Love you too. Bye." The man hung up. Everyone in the locker room was staring at him in astonishment. The man then calmly looked around and asked, "Okay, whose phone is this?" A woman goes out with her husband to a shopping mall. She sees one store and goes, "Hun, that dress looks fabulous. Would you buy it for me?" The man replies, "Are you crazy? The dress looks great on the mannequin, but would look awful on you because you're fat like a washing machine." They keep going, and the wife says, "Look at that blouse. It's lovely. Would you buy it for me?" The man replies, "What? It looks good on a thin mannequin. But look at yourself. You are short and heavy, like a washing machine." They keep going, and at another store, the wife says, "What a lovely skirt. You've been cheap all day long. The least you could do is buy it for me." The man replies, as if, "Are you a thin mannequin? No, you're a heavy washing machine." That night the man was in bed, and he started to feel like getting some. So he calls his wife, "Hey, want to come to bed and, you know?" The wife replies, "What, and start a big washing machine for such a small load? I think you'll just have to wash that little rag by hand." A little old lady was walking down the street, dragging 2 large plastic garbage bags behind her. One of the bags was ripped, and every once in a while, a 20 pounds fell out onto the sidewalk. Noticing this, a policeman stopped her and said, "Ma'am, there are 20 pounds notes falling out of that bag." "Oh, really? Darn it," said the little old lady. "I'd better go back and see if I can find them. Thanks for telling me, officer." "Well, now, not so fast," said the cop. "Where did you get all that money? You didn't steal it, did you?" "Oh, no," said the old lady. "You see, my back garden is right next to a golf course. A lot of golfers come and pee through a knothole in my fence, right into my flower garden. It used to really tick me off. Kills the flowers, you know. Then I thought, why not make the best of it? So now I stand behind the fence by the knothole, real quiet with my hedge clippers. Every time some guy sticks his thing through my fence, I surprise him, grab hold of it, and say, 'Okay, mate, give me 20 pounds or off it comes.'" "Well, that seems only fair," said the cop, laughing. "Okay, good luck. Oh, by the way, what's in the other bag? Not everybody pays." Late one night, a police officer was patrolling a desolate area popular with young couples doing more than just sitting in the dark. Catching his attention was a couple in a car with the interior light on. Moving closer, the cop could see a young man behind the steering wheel reading a newspaper. In the back seat, a young blonde was knitting. The lawman walked up to the vehicle and knocked on the driver's side window. The startled lad rolled it down and said, "Yes, officer. What are you doing?" the cop asked. "Isn't it obvious?" the young man replied. "I'm reading today's newspaper." Pointing to the blonde in the back seat, the policeman grunted, "And what's she doing?" "I believe she's knitting a sweater," the guy behind the wheel responded. "How old are you?" the cop inquired. "I'm 22, officer." "And the girl, how old is she?" The dude in the driver's seat looked at his watch and said, "She'll turn 18 in 10 minutes. The day after a man lost his wife in a scuba diving accident, he was greeted by two grim-faced policemen at his door. "We're sorry to call on you at this hour, Mr. Wilkins, but we have some information about your wife." "Well, tell me," the man said. The policeman said, "We have some bad news, some good news, and some really great news. Which do you want to hear first?" Fearing the worst, Mr. Wilkins said, "Give me the bad news first." So the policeman said, "I'm sorry to tell you, sir, but this morning we found your wife's body in the bay." "Oh, my God," said Mr. Wilkins, overcome by emotion. Then, remembering what the policeman had said, he asked, "What's the good news?" "Well," said the policeman, "when we pulled her up, she had 2 5-pound lobsters and a dozen good-sized Dungeness crabs on her." "If that's the good news, then what's the great news?" Mr. Wilkins demanded. The policeman said, "We're going to pull her up again tomorrow morning." A policeman pulls over a speeding Ferrari. He looks through the window and, to his annoyance, sees a rebellious-looking teenager. The policeman decides he's going to teach this spoiled kid a lesson. He takes a piece of chalk and draws a circle on the floor. "Get out of the car and stand in the circle. If I see you step out, I'll arrest you," he orders the driver. The teenager sighs. "Whatever." He stands in the circle. The policeman takes his stick and smashes the front window. He turns around to see the teen's reaction. The teenager smirks. "Oh, you think that's funny? Watch this," yells the enraged policeman. He proceeds to smash the back windows, but when he turns around, the teenager is still smirking. Furious, the policeman really goes to work. After 2 minutes, the car is a wreck. He turns around and sees the teenager stifling a laugh. "Are you crazy? What is so funny?" The rebellious teen looks up defiantly. "When you weren't looking, I stepped out of the circle 4 times. A cabbie picks up a nun. She gets into the cab, and the cab driver won't stop staring at her. She asks him why he is staring, and he replies, "I have a question to ask you, but I don't want to offend you." She answers, "My dear son, you cannot offend me. When you're as old as I am and have been a nun as long as I have, you get a chance to see and hear just about everything. I'm sure that there's nothing you could say or ask that I would find offensive." "Well, I've always had a fantasy to have a nun kiss me," she responds. "Well, let's see what we can do about that. First, you'll have to be single, and second, you must be Catholic." The cab driver is very excited and says, "Yes, I'm single and I'm Catholic too." The nun says, "Okay, pull into the next alley." He does, and the nun fulfills his fantasy. But when they get back on the road, the cab driver starts crying. "My dear child," said the nun, "why are you crying?" "Forgive me, sister, but I have sinned. I lied. I must confess I'm married and I'm Jewish." The nun says, "That's okay. My name is Kevin, and I'm on my way to a Halloween party." A foreigner enters a country and gets a taxi. On his way to the hotel, he points at a tall building and asks the driver, how long did it take to build that building? The driver responds, 2 years. 2 years! In my country, it would have taken only 2 months, the foreigner said. After a while, the foreigner again asked, how long did it take to build that building? Pointing at a taller building, the driver responds, 3 years. 3 years in my country, it would have taken only 1 year, the foreigner said. Some more time passes. The foreigner again asked, how long did it take to build that building? Pointing at the tallest building. The driver, feeling his country's reputation on the line, said, 1 month. The foreigner, not to be outdone, said, 1 month. In my country, it would have taken only 15 days. A few minutes later, they pass by the country's tallest and most famous building. The foreigner naturally asks, how long did it take to build that building? The driver sighs and says, how do I tell you this? The foreigner looks confused and asks, tell me what? The driver says, on my way to the airport this morning, there was no building there. A tough-looking group of hairy bikers are riding when they see a girl about to jump off a bridge, so they stop. The leader, a big burly man, gets off his bike and says, what are you doing? I'm going to commit suicide, she says. While he doesn't want to appear insensitive, he also doesn't want to miss an opportunity, so he asks, well, before you jump, why don't you give me a kiss? She does, and it is a long, deep, lingering kiss. After she's finished, the tough, hairy biker says, "Wow, that was the best kiss I've ever had. That's a real talent you're wasting. You could be famous. Why are you committing suicide?" My parents don't like me dressing up like a girl. An older, white-haired man walked into a jewelry store one Friday evening with a beautiful young gal at his side. He told the jeweler he was looking for a special ring for his girlfriend. The jeweler looked through his stock and brought out a $5,000 ring and showed it to him. The old man said, "I don't think you understand. I want something very special." At that statement, the jeweler went to his special stock and brought another ring over. "Here's a stunning ring at only $40,000, the jeweler said. The young lady's eyes sparkled and her whole body trembled with excitement. The old man, seeing this, said, "We'll take it." The jeweler asked how payment would be made, and the old man stated by check. "I know you need to make sure my check is good, so I'll write it now, and you can call the bank Monday to verify the funds, and I'll pick the ring up Monday afternoon," he said. Monday morning, a very teed-off jeweler phoned the old man. "There's no money in that account." "I know," said the old man, "but can you imagine the weekend I had?" Little Johnny was sitting in class doing math problems when his teacher picked him to answer a question. Warning: not suitable for people under the age of 18, you have been warned. "Johnny, if there were 5 birds sitting on a fence and you shot one with your gun, how many would be left?" "None," replied Johnny, "'cause the rest would fly away." "Well, the answer is 4, said the teacher, "but I like the way you're thinking. Little Johnny says I have a question for you. If there were 3 women eating ice cream cones in a shop, one was licking her cone, the second was biting her cone, and the third was sucking her cone, which one is married?" "Well," said the teacher nervously, "I guess the one sucking the cone." "No," said little Johnny, "the one with the wedding ring on her finger, but I like the way you're thinking." I was a very happy man and was about to get married. There was just one thing bothering me. It was her beautiful younger sister, Sophia. My prospective sister-in-law was 22, wore very tight miniskirts, and generally was braless. She would regularly bend down when she was near me. I always got a nice view. It had to be deliberate. She never did it around anyone else. One day she called me and asked to come over. "To check the wedding invitations," she said. She was alone when I arrived. She whispered to me that she had feelings and desires for me. She couldn't overcome them anymore. She told me that she wanted me just once before I got married. She said, "Before you are committed to my sister." Well, I was in total shock, and I couldn't mutter a word. "I'm going up to my bedroom. If you want just one last wild fling, just come up and have me." I was stunned and frozen in shock as I watched her go up the stairs. I stood there for a moment, then turned and made a beeline straight to the front door. As I'm walking to my car, lo and behold, my entire future family was standing outside clapping. With tears in his eyes, my father-in-law hugged me and said that I had passed the test, and he couldn't ask for a better man for his daughter. And the moral of the story is, always keep the condoms in your car. One morning, the coroner at the city morgue calls the police with an unusual case. "Inspector, you might want to come down here. We have 3 bodies, all with big smiles on their faces." Curious, the inspector arrives and listens as the coroner explains. "The first body is a 60-year-old Frenchman. Died of a heart failure while making love to his mistress. Hence the enormous smile." The inspector nods. "Makes sense. The second body is a 25-year-old Scotsman. Won 1,000 pounds on the lottery, spent it all on whiskey, and died of alcohol poisoning. Hence the grin." The inspector smirks. "Well, at least he went out happy." Then he points to the third body. "And what about him?" The coroner sighs. "Ah, this is the odd one. Billy Bob, 30, from Oklahoma. Struck by lightning." The inspector frowns. "Then why is he smiling?" The coroner shrugs. "Thought he was having his picture taken." There were 2 old maid sisters, both virgins. It's Friday night, and Gladys looks at Betty and says, "I'm not going to die a virgin. I'm going out, and I'm not coming home till I've been laid." Betty says, "Well, make sure you're home by 10 so I don't worry about you." 10 o'clock rolls around and there's no sign of Gladys. 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Finally, just after 1, the front door flies open. In runs Gladys, straight to the bathroom. Betty goes and knocks on the door. "Are you okay, Gladys?" No answer, so she opens the door and there sits Gladys with her panties around her ankles, legs spread and her head stuck between her legs, looking at herself. "What is it, Gladys? What's wrong?" asks Betty. "Betty, it was 10 inches long when it went in, and 5 when it came out. When I find the other half, you're going to have the time of your life." A policeman, an archer, and a soldier are on an airplane losing altitude. The pilot yells to these passengers, "We're carrying too much weight. Drop whatever you got." The policeman drops his pistol, the archer drops his bow and arrow, and the soldier drops a grenade out of the hatch door. The plane still crashes, and all 3 passengers wake up in different locations. In search for help, they each start making their way through the woods they are now lost in. The policeman stumbles upon a little girl crying over the body of an adult man. He asks the girl, "What happened here?" To which the little girl replies, "I was walking with my daddy and a gun fell out of the sky and hit his head." The archer comes across someone crying over a body as well, a young boy. The archer says, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" The boy tells the archer, "We were playing hide and seek and I found him with an arrow in his head." The soldier pushes through the brush and finds a young boy laughing hysterically, standing in front of a cabin with a giant hole in the wall. The soldier asks the little boy, "Whoa, what did I miss?" The little boy says between laughing fits, "You wouldn't believe the fart I just ripped." A man walks out to the street and catches a taxi just going by. He gets into the taxi and the cabbie says, "Perfect timing. You're just like Frank." Passenger, "Who?" Cabbie, "Frank Feldman. He's a guy who did everything right all the time." Passenger, "There are always a few clouds over everybody." Cabbie, "Not Frank Feldman. He was a terrific athlete. He could have won the Grand Slam at tennis. He could golf with the pros. He sang like an opera baritone and danced like a Broadway star, and you should have heard him play the piano. He was an amazing guy." Passenger, "Sounds like he was really something special." Cabbie, "There's more. He had a memory like a computer. He remembered everybody's birthday. He knew all about wine, which foods to order, and which fork to eat them with. He could fix anything, not like me. I'd change a fuse and the whole street blacks out. But Frank Feldman could do everything right every single time." Passenger, "Wow, what a guy." Cabbie, "He always knew the quickest way to go in traffic and avoid traffic jams. Not like me, I always seem to get stuck in them. But Frank, he never made a mistake. And he really knew how to treat a woman and make her feel good. He would never answer her back, even if she was in the wrong, and his clothing was always immaculate, with his shoes highly polished too. He was the perfect man. He never made a mistake. No one could ever measure up to Frank Feldman." Passenger, "How did you meet him?" Cabbie, "I never actually met Frank. He died and I married his wife." A biker stops by the local Harley-Davidson shop to have his bike repaired. They couldn't fix it while he waited, so he said he didn't live far and would just walk home. On the way home, he stopped at the hardware store and bought a bucket and an anvil. He stopped by the farm store and picked up a couple of chickens and a goose. However, struggling outside the store, he now had a problem: how to carry all of his purchases home. While he was scratching his head, he was approached by a little old lady who told him she was lost. She asked, "Can you tell me how to get to 1603 Mockingbird Lane?" The biker said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I live at 1616 Mockingbird Lane. I would walk you home, but I can't carry this lot." The old lady suggested, "Why don't you put the anvil in the bucket, carry the bucket in one hand, put a chicken under each arm, and hold the goose in your other hand?" "Why, thank you very much," he said, and proceeded to walk the old girl home. On the way, he says, "Let's take my shortcut and go down this alley. We'll be there in no time." The little old lady looked him over cautiously, then said, "I am a lonely widow without a husband to defend me. How do I know that when we get in the alley, you won't hold me up against the wall, pull up my skirt, and have your way with me?" The biker said, "Holy smokes, lady! I am carrying a bucket, an anvil, a goose, and 2 chickens." How in the world could I possibly hold you up against the wall and do that? The lady replied, Set the goose down, cover him with the bucket, put the anvil on top of the bucket, and I'll hold the chickens. A teacher told her young class to ask their parents for a family story with a moral at the end of it and to return the next day to tell their stories. In the classroom the next day, Joe gave his example first. My dad is a farmer and we have chickens. One day we were taking lots of eggs to the market in a basket on the front seat of the truck when we hit a big bump in the road. The basket fell off the seat and all the eggs broke. The moral of the story is not to put all your eggs in one basket. Very good, said the teacher. Next, Mary said, we are farmers too. We had 20 eggs waiting to hatch, but when they did, we only got 10 chicks. The moral of this story is not to count your chickens before they're hatched. Very good, said the teacher again, very pleased with the response so far. Next, it was Barney's turn to tell his story. My dad told me this story about my Aunt Karen. Aunt Karen was a flight engineer in the war, and her plane got hit. She had to bail out over enemy territory, and all she had was a bottle of whiskey, a machine gun, and a machete. Go on, said the teacher, intrigued. Aunt Karen drank the whiskey on the way down to prepare herself. Then she landed right in the middle of 100 enemy soldiers. She killed 70 of them with the machine gun until she ran out of bullets. Then she killed 20 more with the machete till the blade broke. And then she killed the last 10 with her bare hands. Good heavens, said the horrified teacher. What did your father say was the moral of that frightening story? The child said, Stay away from Aunt Karen when she's been drinking. Marge lay tangled in the sheets with her lover, their quiet whispers filling the dimly lit bedroom. Just as things were heating up, a sudden noise echoed from downstairs, the unmistakable sound of the front door slamming shut. Her lover bolted upright, eyes wide with panic. Oh no, your husband is home. What am I going to do? Marge, remarkably calm, simply pulled him back down. Relax, she whispered. He's probably so drunk he won't even notice you're here. Just stay still. The thought of making a run for it and getting caught mid-escape seemed far riskier than staying put, so the man trusted her judgment. He pulled the blankets up to his chin and held his breath. A few minutes later, Marge's husband stumbled into the room, his movements slow and unsteady. He flopped onto the bed with a groan and tugged at the covers, when suddenly his bleary eyes focused on the foot of the bed. Honey, he slurred, pointing. What the hell is going on? I see 6 feet down there. Marge, unfazed, sighed and rolled over. Oh, darling, she cooed. You're so drunk you can't even count. If you don't believe me, try again. Her husband frowned, swaying slightly as he sat up. Determined to prove himself right, he got out of bed, took a deep breath, and slowly began counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. He paused, rubbing his eyes. Huh, gosh, you're right, dear. It was a perfect evening at an upscale restaurant. Soft candlelight, the clinking of wine glasses, and the gentle murmur of conversation filling the air. At one of the tables, a well-dressed woman enjoyed her meal, seemingly lost in thought. Across from her sat a man, at least he had been sitting there a moment ago. A nearby waitress, while taking another table's order, couldn't help but notice something unusual. The man at the woman's table was slowly sliding down his chair. At first, she thought maybe he was adjusting his seat, but then he kept going. Inch by inch, he slumped lower, his posture collapsing like a melting snowman. The woman, however, remained completely unfazed, delicately cutting her steak as if nothing was happening. The waitress hesitated. Maybe she was imagining things, but no. Within seconds, the man had disappeared entirely under the table. Still, the woman showed no reaction. Unable to ignore it any longer, the waitress approached the table and leaned in slightly. "Pardon me, ma'am," she said in a hushed voice, "but I think your husband just slid under the table." The woman finally looked up, blinked once, then smiled politely. "Oh, don't worry," she said, taking a sip of her wine. "That's not my husband. My husband just walked in the door." There he was, crouched on the side of the highway, struggling with a stubborn flat tire. Sweat dripped down his forehead, leaving dark smudges where he'd wiped it away with grease-stained hands. His once crisp white shirt now bore the battle scars of his efforts, and his tie hung limply around his neck like it had given up on life altogether. Standing beside him was his wife, Claire, immaculate, untouched by the chaos, and in the middle of an enthusiastic lecture on the proper way to change a tire. "You're doing it all wrong, David," she sighed, arms folded. "You should loosen the lug nuts before you jack up the car. Honestly, how many times do I have to tell you?" David clenched his jaw, gripping the tire iron just a little too tightly. Just then, a kind-hearted motorist pulled over, rolling down his window. "Hey there! Looks like you're having some trouble. I've changed a lot of tires. Maybe I can help?" David looked up, a glimmer of hope in his exhausted eyes. "Oh, you sure can," he said, exhaling heavily. "My wife here is also an expert. If you could just take over arguing with her about the right way to do this, I'll handle the dirty work and get it done." The staff at a local United Way office realized that it had never received a donation from the town's most successful lawyer. The person in charge of contributions called him to persuade him to contribute and said, "Our research shows that out of a yearly income of at least $500,000, you give not a penny to charity. Wouldn't you like to give back to the community in some way?" The lawyer mulled this over for a moment and replied, "First, did your research also show that my mother is dying after a long illness and has medical bills that are several times her annual income?" Embarrassed, the United Way representative mumbled, No. Or," the lawyer continued, "that my brother, a disabled veteran, is blind and confined to a wheelchair?" The stricken United Way representative began to stammer out an apology, but was interrupted when the lawyer added, "Or that my sister's husband died in a traffic accident." The lawyer's voice rising in indignation. "Leaving her penniless with 3 children?" The humiliated United Way representative, completely beaten, said simply, "I had no idea." On a roll, the lawyer cut him off once again. "So if I don't give any money to them, why should I give any to you?" A young girl from Donegal leaves home to find work in the bright lights of London. She comes home 6 months later and steps out of a taxi wearing a full-length mink coat. "Begorra, Colleen," says her mother, "'tis a lovely soft coat you're wearing, and it looks so expensive. Where did you get that?" Colleen replies, "Sure now, I won it at the bingo. Don't they have wonderful prizes in London?" When the weekend's over, Colleen returns to the bright lights, but she's back to visit her mom a few months later. This time, when she steps out of the taxi, she's wearing a beautiful gold wristwatch and a large diamond ring. "Same exchange with Mom. Same, won it at bingo." Colleen returns to the bright lights again. A few months later, she's back. This time, she's sporting a beautiful emerald and diamond necklace with a matching bracelet and earrings. She hands her mother £1,000 and explains that she won it all in bingo. Then she asks Mum to run her a bath, as she needs to freshen up. When Colleen gets to the bathroom, there's only a 1/4 inch of hot water in the bath. Colleen, a wee bit peeved at her mum being so cheap with the hot water after being handed £1,000, calls downstairs, "Mum, sure now, didn't I ask you to run me a bath? There's only a 1/4 inch of water in the tub." "Indeed there is, me darlin'," replies her mum, "but we don't want you getting your bingo card wet now, do we?" A husband said to his wife, "I miss my family. I hope you will prepare lunch tomorrow so I can invite them. It's been a while." The wife said with a sigh, "God willing, it will be good." The husband said, "Okay, I will invite them." The next morning, the husband went to work, and at 1 o'clock he came home and said to his wife, "Did you cook lunch? My family will come in an hour." And the wife said, "No, I did not cook, because your family are not strangers. They can eat what is in the house." The husband said, "God forgive you. Why didn't you tell me yesterday that you won't cook, and they will soon be arriving? What will I do?" The wife said, "Call them and apologize to them. After all, they are not strangers." The husband left the house upset, and after a few minutes, there was a knock on the door. The wife got up, opened the door, and was surprised to see her family, brothers, sisters, and children. Her father asked her, "Where is your husband?" She said to him, "He left a while ago." Her father said, "Yesterday your husband invited us for lunch. Is it possible for him to invite us and leave the house soon?" The wife was stunned by the news and began rubbing her hands, puzzled that the food in the house was not befitting for her family. She called her husband and said to him, "Why didn't you tell me that you intended to invite my family for lunch?" He said to her, "My family is your family, and yours is mine. There's no difference." She said to him, "Please bring ready-made food with you when coming. There is no food at home." The husband said, "I am very far from home, and your family are not strangers. Feed them from the food in the house as you wanted to feed my family."